Hi, Design Milk. Thanks for having us. My name is Catherine Fowlkes.
I'm VW Fowlkes. We have an architecture firm in Washington, D.C. We do mostly residential work, and we're excited to talk to you this morning. VW, your academic research focused on alternative ideas about the American suburb. How do you think about suburbs now? In many ways, I love suburbs, and the United States has beautiful ones, and they're changing. Now that almost every client we have, we assume at least one of them will work from home. So that's less driving. That means they can, it means that suburbs over time, if this trend continues, will start to take on a totally different identity. It also, the cities themselves are growing, and tendrils, cities around other cities are starting to spring up. In Washington, there's more office space in the periphery than there is in downtown. And so it means that people aren't necessarily commuting as far in many cases, although there's still many people still have long drives in the morning.
Which inherently changes sort of the character of a suburb, might cease to feel like a suburb.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find opportunities to incorporate art or craft work within otherwise modern white residences? Well, I certainly don't think all of our residences that we work on are modern and white, although there are certainly elements of that. But incorporating art and craft is really integral to what we do. It might be the germ of an idea in the beginning that carries itself through. It might be something that's inspired by the client or the specific property. But it is something that the scale of it is something that's always in the front of mind. So we have the larger scale of architecture, but it is made up of smaller pieces that often reflect art and craft.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want buildings to look like they rolled off an assembly line, which means showing the mark of the hand, even in contemporary projects. And there are lots of opportunity to do that. Railings, cabinetry, flooring is often kind of has a higher level of character and expression. And all of these guys are craftsmen and artists. There's really some incredible amount of skill that goes into doing a really good project, and we're honored to be part of it.
Yep, that collaboration is really key, and hopefully it's reflected in the final result. Were you in architecture school at the same time? Was that hard, and what was beneficial about it? We were in architecture school at the same time. We went to different schools, but in the same city, so we lived together and had our own shared hell together. But I can't imagine living with someone who was not understanding of the maybe false urgency that I felt at all times. It was incredibly stressful as well as exhilarating.
Yeah.
So it would be really hard to communicate to someone who wasn't going through that what the big deal was. Why are you so excited, or why are you so sort of?
I think that's true of all graduate school. People get a little bit brainwashed into thinking that what they're doing is very, very important and it's going to save the world. Anyway, it happened to us.
How are DC interiors unique relative to other centers of power? Well, I don't know what other centers of power I've been privy to. DC has a lot of, let's say, type A people, a lot of busy people, but I don't think that's necessarily unique to Washington. But a lot of our clients are stressed, they're busy, and to the extent that we can make their home an oasis, it can be calm, maybe they even feel like they're on vacation in their own home. Those are parts of the conversation we're having.
Yeah, there's a cliche that people have power walls in their houses, like pictures of them shaking hands with senators. I don't think we haven't done that.
Yeah, I've never really seen that before.
It is true that it's a kind of it's known to be a conformist town, and there's a lot of historic preservation regulations in many neighborhoods. and so they tend to be, from an architectural standpoint, they tend to be a little bit more, let's say, traditional in the front, and then clients say, give us license to be a little bit more daring in the back.
Are there any examples of so-called bad taste in your home? Something where sentimentality or nostalgia trumps design norms? Well, I would say that VW teases me that we have a fair amount of fake plants in our home. We also have some real plants, but I can't really resist tucking a little fake plant in a bookshelf. It just sort of adds, and it will never die.
Our son has a ladies' room bathroom sign on his door. That's a little tacky.
I think it's great looking.
And I'm sentimentally attached to my father's old tennis racket, which is Catherine keeps. It's now hanging in our closet. I think it's been a while since I've unfolded one.
Oh, here you go for it.
What's your favorite architectural site or neighborhood in DC? What does DC architecture have that nowhere else does?
DC has quite a few things that no other cities have. The National Cathedral is quite unusual to have a Gothic cathedral smack in the middle of a pretty residential area. I grew up right around there, and I actually remember watching the stonecutters carve the remaining pieces and gargoyles for the cathedral. So that certainly has a place in my heart. And it is just an extraordinary building to walk on the outside as well as the inside.
The National Gallery East Wing is one of the kind of modernist treasures that we love. It's a terrific building. DC has a street layout that is not organic. It was planned, and it creates a lot of triangular shaped buildings and diagonal shaped streets. That's not totally unique, but it really confuses the grid, and sometimes it makes it confusing to get around town.
But it's reflected in the architecture that goes on those lots. I would also add that the embassies in DC is very unique to Washington for obvious reasons. And the architecture of those embassies varies, of course, from country to country.
Yeah, some of them are old mansions that have been kind of retrofitted into embassies, but many are reflective of those kind of national identities. And it was really interesting as a child seeing that. In fact, I thought I wanted to go into the Foreign Service because I was so fascinated by the embassies. It never occurred to me that it was the architecture that was making me excited. But the big ones that had a big impact, Brazil by Niemeyer is one we drove by all the time, and it's a big glass building it's a big glass cube on a smaller glass cube, and it was dazzling as a child.
And juxtaposed right next to the English one, which was Lutyens, I believe.
Yeah, a beautiful building by Lutyens, which then and there's an Embassy Row that has one after another. Germany is very German.
But I remember when the Finnish embassy was under construction, and it was very unusual, and I remember waiting to see what the result would be. Now it's one of my absolute favorite buildings.
VW, where do you see your background in broadcast journalism show up in your design work? I was a producer at ABC News before I went to architecture school. Broadcast journalism is very similar to architecture. It is, you have an idea, but you need to have a lot of people to collaborate with in order to make it real. A lot of people who know more about a lot of things than you do. There's a lot of there's a technical side of it. There's a logistical side of it. There's a kind of a roll up your sleeves and there's kind of an analog element where you have to get to a place and do the thing and dig a hole or turn on lights or
I remember once
the satellite feeds and all that kind of stuff is in service to telling to the original idea.
I remember once explaining to somebody that being an architect, obviously we are designing something, but so much of what we do is we are producing this major event that often takes, years. But that's the obvious correlation to me as well. Thank you so much.
That was fun.
Really fun. And thank you, Design Milk.